I gave my son the secret family recipe that built our catering business. He stole it, fired me, and told the newspaper it was his own. He didn't know I kept the most important ingredient to myself. Before we begin, I want to thank you for pulling up a chair and joining me in my kitchen tonight. If you believe that a family's story is its most precious possession, and that our ancestors live on in the food we cook and the love we share, then you are in the right place. It does my old heart good to see you all here. Go on and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now let me tell you the story of how my own son tried to steal my soul, and how I had to remind him that some things can't be bought, sold, or stolen. My name is Estelle Baptiste, and for 68 years, my life has been measured in tablespoons of paprika and pounds of shrimp, in the low simmer of a stock pot and the sharp, clean scent of freshly chopped parsley. My world is the Treme neighborhood of New Orleans, and my heart is my kitchen. For over 40 years, that kitchen has been the soul of Baptiste's Blessed Bites, a catering company I started with my late husband Antoine, out of this very house. We weren't fancy. We catered church socials, neighborhood jazz funerals, family reunions, and Mardi Gras cruise. We cooked the food of our people, Creole soul food, dishes that carried the stories of our ancestors from Haiti through the bayou and onto the plates of our community. The heart of our cooking, the thing that made folks' eyes roll back in their heads, was our secret. It was a recipe passed down from my great-grandmother, a woman who knew the old ways, the magic of herbs and spices. It was a complex 20-spice blend we called our Creole dust, a mixture so perfectly balanced it could make you weep. But the dust was only half the story. The true secret, the part that was never written down, was the foundation it was built upon. A process my grandmother taught me hand over hand, a process she called ensemble, the Creole word for together. It was a unique black roux, the soul of our cooking, made not with flour and butter, but with stone-ground cornmeal and a special rendered pecan oil, slow toasted for hours until it was the color of a moonless night, infused with bay leaves and a wild, fragrant herb I knew how to find in the quiet parts of the bayou. The ensemble was the spirit. The Creole dust was the body. Together they were magic. For years I was the keeper of that magic. But at 68 my hands had started to ache, and the long hours standing over a hot stove were taking their toll. It was time I decided to secure the legacy. My son Jerome was the future. At 43 he was brilliant, ambitious, and armed with a freshly minted MBA from Tulane. He had come back to New Orleans with a fire in his eyes, full of talk about scaling the business, leveraging our brand, and other words I didn't fully understand. He was a good boy, my Jerome, but he had a hunger for a world beyond the Treme, a world of glass-walled offices and expensive suits. He had a new girlfriend too, a sharp, slick woman named Sasha Dubois. She was a marketing consultant with a smile as bright and hard as a diamond. She looked at our little catering business not as a community institution, but as a dated local brand with untapped global potential. She and Jerome would have hushed, excited conversations at my kitchen table, their laptops open, their faces illuminated by the glow of spreadsheets and market analysis charts. They saw a gold mine. I saw a legacy. One rainy Tuesday afternoon I decided the time had come. I called Jerome into the kitchen. The air was thick with the scent of a simmering gumbo. I sat him down at the old, scarred wooden table where he had done his homework as a boy. From a locked box where I kept my important papers I took out a small yellowed recipe card. On it, in my own careful cursive, was the recipe for the Creole dust. Every one of the 20 spices, every precise measurement, every instruction for toasting and grinding. Jerome, I began, my voice thick with the gravity of the moment. This is more than just a recipe. This is our story. This is your great-great-grandmother's journey from Haiti in a bottle. This is the sweat of your father and the love of your mother. This is the heart of our business. I placed the card in his hand. His fingers, so used to the cold, smooth surface of a smartphone, closed around the worn cardstock. He looked at it, then up at me, his eyes shining with a mixture of awe and ambition. I'm trusting you with this, son, I said, my voice low and serious. I'm trusting you with our family's soul. The business is yours to lead now. I'll still be here to cook, to guide you, but you're the boss. It's your time to carry the torch. He stood up and hugged me, a rare, heartfelt embrace. I won't let you down, Mama, he whispered. I'm going to make the Baptiste name famous. I'm going to make you proud. I believed him. I looked at my handsome, educated son and I saw the future. I saw the culmination of generations of hard work. I saw a boy who would take our humble legacy and build an empire. I had given him the body of our secret, the written recipe, the part a man with an MBA could understand. The soul, the ansem, I would teach him in time just as my grandmother had taught me. It was a process that couldn't be learned from a card, but only through patience, through feel, through time spent together over a hot stove. I had no idea that in his mind, the transaction was already complete. I had given him the intellectual property, the asset. I thought I was passing on a legacy. He thought I was handing him the keys to the kingdom. And he had no intention of sharing the throne. The transformation began almost immediately. It was not a slow, organic evolution. It was a swift, corporate coup. My Jerome, with Sasha whispering in his ear, was not interested in honoring the past. He was interested in monetizing it. The first casualty was the name. Baptiste's Blessed Bites, a name that spoke of family, faith, and community, was deemed too folksy by Sasha. One morning I came into the kitchen to find Jerome on the phone with a graphic designer, finalizing a new logo. A week later he unveiled the new brand. We were now JB Creole Kitchen. The logo was a sterile, minimalist design of a chef's knife and a fork crossed, with the initials JB in a sharp sans serif font. My name Estelle, my husband's name Antoine, our very identity had been reduced to an initial. It's clean, Mama, Jerome explained, seeing the look of hurt on my face. It's upscale. Blessed Bites sounds like a church bake sale. JB Creole Kitchen sounds like a premium brand. It's about perception. The warm, welcoming branding we had built over 40 years was replaced overnight. Our old handwritten menus were replaced with sleek, gray cards with minimalist font and inflated prices. Our delivery vans, which had proudly borne the Blessed Bites name all over the city, were stripped and repainted in a severe corporate gray emblazoned with the new soulless logo. Next came the clients. For decades, our bread and butter had been the people of New Orleans. We catered the repast after Ms. Celestine's funeral, a woman who had known my mother. We catered the annual fundraiser for the St. Augustine High School marching band. We catered baby showers, anniversaries, and block parties. Our food was woven into the fabric of our community's life. Jerome, guided by Sasha's marketing plan, saw this as a weakness. The margins are too low, Mama, he'd say, pointing at a spreadsheet on his laptop. We're spending too much time on small potatoes gigs. The real money is in corporate catering. He began to turn down the old jobs. The church socials were not cost-effective. The neighborhood block parties were off-brand. Instead, he used his business school connections to pursue contracts with downtown law firms, tech startups, and convention organizers. Our kitchen, once filled with the joyous chaos of preparing food for our neighbors, was now a sterile production line for tiny, elegant hors d'oeuvres and bland, inoffensive chicken dishes for corporate luncheons. The food itself began to change. I was still in the kitchen, my hands still in the roux, but my authority was being systematically undermined. Jerome would come in with printouts from food blogs, talking about deconstructed gumbo and sous vide techniques. Mama, the corporate clients want modern, he'd insist. They don't want heavy, old-fashioned food. We need to lighten it up. Make it more photogenic. Sasha was a constant presence, snapping pictures of the food with her phone, artfully arranging microgreens on top of my classic shrimp Creole. It's all about the visuals, Estelle, she'd say, not unkindly, but with the unthinking condescension of youth. People eat with their eyes first. Especially on Instagram. I felt like a stranger in my own kitchen. The recipes were still mine, but the soul was being bleached out of them. The Creole dust was still the foundation of the flavor, but everything around it was becoming a pale, corporate imitation of what it once was. I tried to talk to Jerome to make him understand. Son, I said one evening after a particularly grueling day of preparing 500 tiny, flavorless crab cakes for a banking conference. This isn't us. This isn't our food. You're losing the thing that makes us special. The soul. He looked at me, his face a mixture of frustration and pity. Mama, you don't understand. This is business. That soul doesn't show up on a profit and loss statement. We're getting a 6-figure contract with the convention center. That's what's special. You built a nice little business. I'm building an empire. His words cut me to the quick. A nice little business. The business that had put him through college, that had paid for his fancy MBA. The business that had been his father's pride and my life's work. He saw it not as a legacy to be cherished, but as a quaint, underdeveloped asset to be stripped and sold for parts. Sasha was the architect of this new vision. She saw Jerome not as my son but as the face of the brand. She convinced him that his story, the young, handsome MBA-educated son of a traditional Creole cook, who was now elevating the cuisine, was a powerful marketing tool. He was the star. I was just the folksy, sentimental backstory. I became a ghost in my own company, a relic of a bygone era. The laughter and camaraderie of my old kitchen staff were replaced by the quiet, efficient movements of new chefs. Jerome had hired, chefs who knew how to sous vide but had never learned the patient, watchful art of making a proper roux. I was still there, a silent, disapproving presence in the corner, but I was no longer the heart of the operation. Jerome had the recipe. He had the business plan. He had Sasha. He didn't think he needed my soul anymore. The final, brutal severing of my life's work came wrapped in the glossy pages of a national food magazine. Sasha, in a stroke of marketing genius that I had to admit was impressive, had landed Jerome a major feature. It was for Southern Plate, the country's most respected publication on food and culinary culture. They were doing a piece on the new faces of Creole cuisine, and Jerome was to be the star. "This is it, Mama," he'd announced, bursting into the kitchen a few weeks before the interview, waving an email from the magazine's editor. "This is going to put us on the map. National recognition. This is the moment we go from a local brand to a household name." He and Sasha prepared for the journalist's visit with the precision of a military operation. They had the kitchen deep cleaned and sanitized until it gleamed with an unnatural, sterile light. They bought new, expensive copper pots to hang on the walls for visual appeal. Sasha coached Jerome for hours, helping him craft his narrative, his personal brand story. I was instructed to be present for the interview, but to remain in the background. "They want to see the authentic setting, Estelle," Sasha had explained carefully. "But this story is about Jerome. He's the visionary. You're the inspiration." The inspiration. I was to be a silent, smiling prop in the play of my own life. The journalist, a sharp woman from New York, arrived with a photographer. She was charmed by Jerome's smooth, articulate narrative. He spoke of his MBA, of market trends, of his vision to take the rustic, homespun flavors of his childhood and refine them for a modern palate. He made it sound as if he had discovered our family's food in some dusty, forgotten attic and single-handedly polished it into a valuable gem. When the journalist asked about the famous Creole dust, the heart of their flavor, Jerome gave a modest, practiced smile. "That's my baby," he said, the lie sliding from his tongue like honey. "It's something I developed after business school. I wanted to apply a kind of scientific, methodical approach to the traditional Creole spice blends. It took me years of trial and error to get the balance just right." I stood by the stove, my back to them, stirring a pot of shrimp stock that didn't need stirring. My knuckles were white on the handle of the wooden spoon. I felt a cold, sick wave of disbelief wash over me. He was stealing my great-grandmother's legacy, my father's pride, my life's work, right in front of my face and calling it his own invention. The day after the journalist left, Jerome and Sasha sat me down at the kitchen table. The same table where I had given him the recipe card. This time, however, there was no ceremony, no love. Jerome placed a crisp, white envelope in front of me. His face was a mask of cool, corporate resolve. He couldn't quite meet my eyes. "Mama," he began, his voice formal, rehearsed. "As the company moves into this new phase of growth, we need to formalize our corporate structure. We need a clear, forward-facing leadership team. For legal and operational reasons, we're having to make some changes to our staffing." I looked at the envelope. I didn't need to open it. I knew what it was. "What are you saying, Jerome?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Sasha jumped in, her voice smooth and placating. "What Jerome is saying, Estelle, is that your role in the company has been invaluable. But as we move forward, we need a more streamlined operation. Your official position is being eliminated." Eliminated. I was being eliminated from my own life. "You're firing me," I said, the words flat, devoid of emotion. "It's not a firing, Mama," Jerome insisted, finally looking at me, his eyes pleading for me to make this easy for him. "It's a retirement. A well-deserved one. You've worked so hard. It's time for you to relax. We'll give you a generous severance package." Severance package. For the business I had built from scratch. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it stole my breath. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly on the floor. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, the man who was now stealing my soul and offering to pay me for it with my own money. I didn't say a word. I turned and walked out of my kitchen, out of the heart of my own company, and went into my house, the silence of my living room a welcome refuge. The magazine article came out a month later. It was worse than I could have ever imagined. The cover featured a large, glossy photo of Jerome, looking handsome and confident, a shaker of JB Creole Kitchen spice blend in his hand. The headline read, "The New Prince of Creole, How Jerome Baptiste is Reinventing a New Orleans Dynasty." The article was a masterpiece of erasure. It painted me as a sweet traditional home cook, from whom Jerome had drawn vague inspirational memories. It praised his innovative spice blend, his business acumen, his vision. My 40 years of backbreaking work, my ancestral legacy, had been reduced to a footnote in the story of his brilliant success. He hadn't just fired me. He had publicly, professionally, and personally annihilated me. He had stolen my story and left me with nothing. Or so he thought. He had the recipe for the Creole dust, yes. But he had no idea that the body is useless without the soul. And the soul of our food was a secret I still held close to my heart. The magazine article was a roaring success. JB Creole Kitchen was suddenly the hottest new brand in the culinary world. Jerome was a star. He was invited on morning talk shows, featured in online food blogs, and hailed as a genius. He and Sasha were triumphant. They secured a massive investment from a venture capital firm and went into overdrive, launching a line of pre-packaged gourmet Creole meals for high-end grocery stores and a bottled version of the JB Creole Dust Marinade. From the quiet of my home, I watched their meteoric rise with a cold, heavy heart. It felt like watching a stranger wear my clothes, live in my house, and claim my life as their own. My old, loyal customers from the neighborhood would stop me on the street, their faces a mixture of confusion and sympathy. "We saw your boy in that magazine, Estelle," one would say. "Didn't know he was the one who came up with all that." I would just smile a sad, quiet smile and say nothing. The first wave of JB Creole Kitchen products hit the shelves with a flurry of hype. The packaging was beautiful, the marketing was brilliant, and the initial sales were strong. Jerome and Sasha hosted a lavish launch party at a chic art gallery in the Warehouse District, a world away from the church basements and community centers where I had built my business. But then a strange thing began to happen. The initial excitement started to fade, replaced by a quiet, growing hum of disappointment. The online reviews for the new product line started to come in, and they were lukewarm at best. "It's fine," one food blogger wrote. "The spice is there, but it tastes flat. It's missing the depth I remember from the old Baptistes." Another review said, "A decent weeknight meal, but it lacks that special something, that soul that made their catered food legendary." The same feedback started coming from the corporate clients. The food was professionally prepared, it was delivered on time, but it wasn't memorable. It didn't have the wow factor they had been promised. It was just food. Good but not great. Certainly not worth the premium price they were paying. The problem was simple. Jerome had the body, but he didn't have the soul. He was mass-producing the Creole dust, but he was building his flavors on a foundation of bland, commercial broths and standard butter and flour roux. He was trying to replicate my food without the ansem, the secret, unwritten heart of our cooking. He was trying to sing a song without the melody. I knew his process because I had seen it. He had tried to get me to teach him the roux part a few times, but he had always been impatient. He didn't understand the slow, watchful process, the subtle changes in scent and color. "Mama, there has to be a faster way," he'd say, checking his phone while I stood stirring for what seemed like an eternity. "Can't we just buy pre-made roux?" He saw it as a tedious, old-fashioned step, not as the foundational pillar of our entire cuisine. He didn't know about the rendered pecan oil. He didn't know about the wild herb I gathered myself from the bayou. He thought the magic was all in the spice jar. He had no idea the magic began in the pot. As the weeks turned into months, the buzz around JB Creole Kitchen died down. The sales of the prepackaged meals began to plummet. Grocery stores started reducing their orders. The corporate catering contracts, once the cornerstone of his new empire, were not being renewed. The new Prince of Creole was discovering a hard truth. You can't market your way out of a flavor deficit. I saw the strain on Jerome's face when I'd occasionally run into him at the local market. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a haunted, worried look. He and Sasha, once a united front of ambition, were now constantly bickering. I overheard them one day in the parking lot of the grocery store, their voices sharp and angry. "The numbers are down, Jerome," Sasha was saying, her voice a low hiss. "The investors are getting nervous. People are saying the food isn't the same." "What do you want me to do?" he snapped back. "I'm using the recipe. It's the exact same recipe." "Then something else is wrong," she insisted. "There's something you're missing. Something your mother did that you're not doing." He just shook his head, a look of frustrated denial on his face. "No, it's all there. He gave it to me. It's all in the spices." I turned away before they could see me, a slow, sad smile touching my lips. He still didn't get it. He had the words, but he couldn't hear the music. He had stolen my legacy, but he had failed to capture its essence. His empire, built on a foundation of lies and corporate branding, was beginning to crumble. And I knew, with the quiet certainty of a woman who understood the soul of her own cooking, that it was time for me to remind the city of New Orleans what Baptiste food was really supposed to taste like. My comeback was not a loud, angry declaration of war. It was a quiet, simmering act of culinary rebellion. I didn't open a rival catering company. I didn't take out an ad in the newspaper denouncing my son. I did what a Baptiste woman has always done when her heart is heavy and her spirit needs healing. I started cooking. The idea came to me one quiet Sunday morning as I sat in my pew at St. Augustine's. The pastor was preaching about fellowship, about the power of breaking bread together. And I realized that was what had been stolen from me. Not just a business, but my purpose. My purpose was to feed my community, to bring people together around a table. Jerome had taken the business, but he couldn't take that. So I decided to host a Sunday supper. Not for profit, but for my soul. I went to my old worn address book and made a few calls. My first invitation went to Ms. Loretta, an elder from my church who had been one of my first customers 40 years ago. My second went to a young man named Michael, a local food blogger whose opinion was highly respected in the city. My third went to a handful of my oldest and dearest friends. I invited 10 people in all for a simple traditional Creole supper in my home. That Sunday my kitchen came alive again. For the first time in months I felt a sense of joy, of purpose. The air filled with the rich, familiar sense of my ancestors. I didn't cook the bland corporate food that was being served under my son's new brand. I cooked our food. I made a dark, smoky gumbo, a rich shrimp creole, a tender smothered chicken, dirty rice and sweet potato pone. And for the first time since I had been cast out of my own business, I made the ansem. I rendered the pecan oil myself. I took out the wild herbs I had carefully dried and bundled. I stood over my cast iron pot, my hands moving with a memory that lived deeper than bone, and I slow toasted the stone-ground cornmeal, watching it, smelling it, feeling it, until it transformed into a black, fragrant, magical roux. It was the soul of my cooking, and as its deep, smoky aroma filled my house, I felt my own soul begin to heal. That first Sunday supper was a thing of beauty. We sat around my old dining room table, the one Jerome and Sasha had never used. We ate, we talked, we laughed. Ms. Loretta took one bite of the gumbo, closed her eyes, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. "Now that's it," she whispered. "That's the taste I remember. That's a Baptiste gumbo." The young food blogger Michael didn't say much during the meal. He just ate, his expression one of intense, focused concentration. The next day, his review appeared on his popular blog, Nola Eats. The headline was simple: "I found the missing soul of Baptiste's blessed bites." He wrote about the meal with an almost poetic reverence. He described the hollow corporate taste of the food from J.B. Creole Kitchen, and then he contrasted it with the profound ancestral depth of the food he had eaten at my table. "The famous Creole dust is the melody," he wrote. "But at Estelle Baptiste's table I finally heard the harmony. There is a deep, smoky, almost mystical foundation to her cooking, a secret that elevates it from mere food to a spiritual experience. Whatever that secret is, it did not get passed on to her son." The blog post went viral. My phone started ringing off the hook. People I hadn't heard from in years, chefs from other restaurants, even tourists who had read the blog, were all begging for an invitation to one of my Sunday suppers. So I hosted another one the next week, and another the week after that. My Sunday suppers became the hottest, most exclusive ticket in town. They were not a business, they were a testament. Each plate of food I served was a quiet, powerful statement, a reclamation of my own story. I never once mentioned my son or his company. I didn't have to. The food spoke for me. It told the story of our family, of our history, of a legacy that could not be stolen because it was not a thing to be owned. It was a thing to be felt. The buzz grew from a quiet hum to a deafening roar. People would talk about my suppers in hushed, reverent tones. They would debate what the secret was. They knew it wasn't just the spices. It was something more. Something deeper. Meanwhile, the empire my son was trying to build was crumbling. His investors were pulling out. His grocery store contracts were being cancelled. His corporate clients were defecting to other caterers. He had the brand, the marketing, the MBA. But I had the soul. And in a city like New Orleans, soul is the only currency that truly matters. He had tried to build a business on a recipe. I was rebuilding my legacy on a relationship. A relationship between me, my ancestors, and the community I was born to feed. The final act of my quiet culinary war was not orchestrated by me, but by the insatiable curiosity of the food world. The story of the missing soul of Baptiste cooking had become a legend in culinary circles. A tale of a corporate son and his matriarch mother, of a stolen legacy and a secret, soulful flavor that could only be found at an exclusive Sunday supper in the Treme. The narrative was too delicious to ignore. The call came not to me but to Michael, the young food blogger who had written the first rave review. It was from the editor of Southern Plate, the very magazine that had crowned Jerome the new Prince of Creole. They had been following the story, the plummeting sales of JB Creole Kitchen, and the meteoric rise of my underground supper club. Their most feared and respected food critic, a man named Alistair Finch, was flying to New Orleans. He wanted a seat at my table. Michael called me, his voice a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Estelle," he said. "This is Alistair Finch. He's a legend. His reviews can make or break a restaurant. Are you sure you want to do this?" I felt a quiet, calm certainty settle over me. "Michael," I said, "you just tell Mr. Finch that he is welcome in my home. Sunday at 6. That Sunday I cooked with the spirit of my ancestors guiding my hands. I prepared the same menu I had served at that first supper. I did not cook to impress. I cooked to remember. I cooked to honor. I cooked my truth. Alistair Finch arrived not with a flourish, but with a quiet, unassuming presence. He was an older white man with kind, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. He sat at my table with the other guests and simply observed. He listened to the stories, he felt the fellowship, and he ate my food. He ate slowly, deliberately, his expression unreadable. When the meal was over, he stood up, walked over to me in the kitchen and took my hand. "Mrs. Baptiste," he said, his voice full of a deep, genuine respect. "Thank you. That was not a meal. That was a history lesson." His review was published 2 weeks later. It was not just a review, it was a reckoning. The article was titled, "The Prince and the Queen, A Tale of Two Creoles." He began by systematically, surgically dismantling JB Creole Kitchen. He described the food as technically proficient but emotionally bankrupt, a soulless, corporate facsimile of a great culinary tradition. He called the bottled marinade an insult to the patient art of flavor building. He wrote, "Jerome Baptiste has taken his mother's beautiful, complex song and turned it into a cheap, repetitive jingle." Then he turned his attention to my Sunday supper. He wrote about the experience with a reverence I had never seen in a food review. He didn't just describe the taste of the food, he described the feeling of it. And then he identified the secret. "The famous Baptiste Creole dust is indeed a masterpiece of spice blending," he wrote. "But I discovered at Estelle Baptiste's table that it is merely the paint. The canvas, the deep, smoky, complex foundation upon which all this flavor is built, is a unique, slow-toasted black roux. It is a flavor that speaks of patience, of history, of a knowledge that cannot be written on a recipe card or scaled in a factory. It is the flavor of a mother's love and an ancestor's wisdom. It is, in a word, soul." He ended the article with a single, devastating paragraph that would be quoted in culinary schools for years to come. In his ambition, Jerome Baptiste made a critical error. He believed the heart of his family's legacy was a list of ingredients he could own. He was wrong. The heart of the Baptiste legacy is his mother. He may have stolen the recipe, but Estelle Baptiste kept the soul. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The article was a nuclear bomb that vaporized what was left of J.B. Creole Kitchen. The last of the investors pulled out. The grocery stores dropped the product line entirely. Jerome became a pariah in the New Orleans food scene, a cautionary tale of a man who had sold his birthright for a mess of corporate pottage. My son and Sasha left New Orleans a few months later, their empire in ruins, their reputations destroyed. I heard they moved somewhere up north where no one knew their names or their story. As for me, my life was transformed once again. The offers came flooding in. Offers to franchise my Sunday suppers, to bottle the real Baptiste flavor, to build my own empire. I turned them all down. I had no interest in building an empire. I was interested in building a community. The offer I did accept came from a television network. They wanted me to host a show, not a competition, but a quiet, beautiful series dedicated to preserving the authentic ancestral foodways of my community. A show where I could tell the stories of our people through the food we cook. And so, my kitchen, the one my son had tried to take from me, became a television studio. But it was still my kitchen. It was still filled with the scent of my ancestors, with the love of my community, and with the quiet, unshakable power of a woman who knew the difference between a recipe and a soul. I had lost a son, but I had reclaimed myself. And in the end, I had learned that a true legacy is not something you own. Something you share.